Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Paridana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasudi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna everyone. So welcome to this Sri Isopanisad study. So today we'll be discussing verses 1, 2, and 3. So just a quick overview and review from last week. So the Isopanisad, the title is Discovering the Original Person. So we'll be discussing today this Ishvara, this Supreme Controller. And the purpose of the Isopanisad, or one of the main objectives, is to establish the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a person. So this title is Discovering the Original Person. So the source of all things, the origin of all origins. So the Isopanisad is broken up into these 5 sections. So we discussed the invocation last week, and we'll discuss this 1 through 3 as well this week. So the verses from the invocation through 3, they speak about how to live in harmony with Ishvara, this Supreme Controller. And then verses 4 through 8, it discusses how to understand Ishvara with this spiritual vision. And we'll see how the Mahabhagavad sees the Ishvara, the Supreme Lord. Then in verses 9 through 11, we're going to discuss the right and wrong knowledge or vidya for understanding Ishvara. We'll see so-called knowledge and dangerous knowledge, and also the right knowledge for understanding Ishvara. Then we'll similarly understand the right and wrong ways to worship Ishvara. And then finally, in 15 through 18, we'll see these beautiful prayers to Ishvara to reveal himself to the devotee. So this is the overview or structure of the Sri Isopanisad. Okay? So last week we discussed this verse, Om Purnamadaha Purnam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vishishyate. Very beautiful verse. And it says that Krishna is perfect and complete. He has everything, and he makes no mistakes. And because he is perfect and complete, everything coming from him is also complete. Right? So, and then, but though he is making so many complete wholes, he remains complete. So that's that spiritual math. 1 minus 1 equals 1. He is never depleted. So we understand that everything is operating according to his desires. Nothing happens randomly. And because he is complete, the creation he has made is also complete. Right? He has full resources at his disposal. So he has no reason to manufacture something without full and sufficient resources. When a factory is manufacturing something, they have to make based on the supply stock of their raw materials. But Krishna is complete. So he has no shortage of raw materials, nor when he makes one is he now depleted by any stock. He is full stock. Right? So there is never a shortage. And the conclusion there is that everything we need for our existence is provided within this complete creation. So it is not about working harder, we just have to work smarter. Right? And we said that we're all searching for complete satisfaction. Until we find that, there will be some lamenting, some hankering. We want 100% absolute fulfillment. And due to illusion, we don't understand that this world is equipped with everything needed even for complete satisfaction. Otherwise, it wouldn't be considered complete, right? It would be missing something. So in ignorance, we spend so much time trying to complete our life with sense enjoyment and finding, more money and more wealth and more fame. But this is not a good use of our consciousness, which itself is complete. The human form of life has complete consciousness available to it in order to achieve complete happiness. Right? So this searching for sense gratification, it leads to frustration and a feeling of incompleteness. I wish I had this. I wish the world was this way. I wish we had one more hour in a day, right? I wish I had more jewels. But in reality, we're using this complete whole not for what it was meant for. It was meant singly to realize the complete whole. That is the only purpose for this material world. It was created to give us a chance to realize the Supreme Lord. But we're trying to use it instead to satisfy our senses. It's like if you try to write a book using a cell phone. It'll be frustrating because the cell phone was not meant to write a book. So using this material world to enjoy your senses will lead to frustration because that's not what it was meant for. So how are we supposed to use this world we discussed? Knowing that the completeness in our life, it is only achieved when we are in connection with the complete whole. So complete satisfaction occurs when we engage with the complete whole. And that is the conclusion from this invocation verse. Right? And any incompleteness we feel is simply due to our lack of connection with the complete whole. Right? So that was what we understood from this invocation verse. So now, complete happiness comes from connection with the complete whole. So now we'll discuss verse 1. And verse 1 reads as this: everything animate or inanimate that is within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. One should therefore accept only things necessary for himself, which are set aside as his quota, and one should not accept other things, knowing well to whom they belong. So this is a very, very, very important verse. And if we understand this verse and this Ishavasya principle, it is a transformational verse that should really give us the understanding of how to shape our lives. It should really shake our consciousness, and it will stop us from becoming thieves. So, very, very important verse, and very clear and direct. Many of the verses I mentioned last time are a little bit hard to understand or interpret, but this first verse is very direct and very clear. Right? So this is an important understanding. So we're going to discuss this Ishavasya principle. We want to work to bring this Ishavasya principle into our life. And the word Ishavasya means that it belongs to God. Right? So that is the meaning of Ishavasya. And the Ishavasya thus principle means that to live a God or Ishvara centered life, keeping the Lord in the center of our life, knowing who is the proprietor. Right? So it is saying that this all the things around us, they are controlled by the Lord. And thus the Isavasya principle means to live in accordance with that understanding. And now how to live within that understanding takes some time. So in this verse we specifically see who is the source and the proprietor of everything around us. Right? It says, again in the verse, everything animate or inanimate that is within this world is controlled and owned by the Lord. So what is not included within everything animate or inanimate? That includes everything. It is owned and controlled by the Lord. And that has a very significant implication, which we'll discuss in a minute. But let's just peel apart the statement that everything is owned by the Lord. So we all want to be proprietors. Mankind is always trying to claim ownership. Groups of society will claim ownership to land. This is my land. These are my resources that lie below the earth that I've demarked as my land. But actually, what right do we have to claim ownership? None. Everything, every single thing around us is but a manifestation of Krishna's energy. Nothing belongs to us. There is the Para and Para Shakti, all the material elements, air, water, earth, fire, ether. Even the intelligence, the mind, and the false ego, they are all part of his inferior energy, the Apara Shakti. And all the living entities, all the jivas, they are part of his Para Shakti. So everything is one of his energies. And the energy is owned by the energetic, the source. Like the power that comes through the plug points in our home. That comes from the generation station, the source of that. As soon as it's controlled by that, as soon as that generation shuts off, the power stops. So all the energies around us, they are owned and controlled by the energetic. Right? So Krishna is the full source, the controller and the maintainer of everything. Nothing exists independent of him. Animate or inanimate is the point that's being made here. So in Srila Prabhupada in the purport, gives the example of Krishna is like the fire. From fire, heat and light are dispersed. The heat is from fire and so is the light. You can't separate heat and light from fire. They are eternally connected. So similarly, everything that we see around us is eternally connected and controlled by Krishna. Even the matter. It is all Krishna's energy. That's earth, that's air, the fire, water, ether. It's all arranged under his direction. And what this means then is we are never actually separated from Krishna. It is only illusion or Maya that leads us to think we are separated from Krishna. But in reality, every step we take, every interaction we have, we are constantly interacting with Krishna's energies. And we know Krishna is non-different from his energies. Right? So, if Krishna is the source of everything, if he is the controller of everything, animate, inanimate, then the powerful implication is he is the proprietor. He owns everything, including us. He is the source of our living entity. So we are his. Right? And this is the consciousness that we're trying to learn through this Ishavasya principle. That everything is the is the property of Krishna. So laying claim to ourselves being the owner will only lead to frustration and suffering. Right? So, and kind of very simple logic is, what are we the owners of. We are not we think, oh no, I'm going to the office, I'm making some money, and then from this money I'm buying some materials and facilities, so that's mine. But think to what is it that we actually are creating? We're simply rearranging the Lord's resources. Prabhupada gives the example in the purport of the carpenter who builds a home. He's given money to acquire some raw materials, some supplies, and he puts it together very nicely. He builds his beautiful home. But does he get to move in? No, he is not the owner. He was using the materials provided to him by somebody else. Though he did all the work to manufacture the home, he doesn't own it. The person providing the resources, the raw materials, is the owner. Right? So who is providing all the raw materials, the resources for us? It is Krishna. So to claim ownership is as foolish as that carpenter thinking that, oh no, this is my home, now that I have built it. So whatever we create in this world, through our hard work, through our intelligence, we have to understand that we are providing none of the ingredients. So whoever is providing the ingredients, he is the real owner. Right? If I want to enjoy my iPhone, who has provided the raw materials, even the intelligence to create? It is Krishna. So we must then understand how to use it. So our proprietorship is very temporary. It's very limited. We simply are borrowing. We came into this world with nothing, and we'll leave this world with nothing. In between, we are just arranging, different materials in different ways. But the resources are Krishna's. Even this body was given to us by Krishna. We're like a tenant in an apartment. We can be kicked out at any time. At some point, we'll be kicked out of this body also. Willingly or unwillingly. It'll be forced upon us. So this powerful statement here is we must know who is the real proprietor. Because if that man who built the house, the carpenter, thinks it's my house and brings his bags and moves in, there will be conflict. There will be a disagreement. And ultimately that carpenter will be frustrated because his desire to own that house will never be fulfilled. And if he tries to claim ownership, he will be punished. Right? The owner will say, call the police, and this person is trespassing. And he'll put it in jail because he is falsely claiming proprietorship. So when we try to falsely claim proprietorship to everything around in this world, we are nothing but thieves. And thieves are always punished. And that is why there is so much suffering around here. Missing this critical point of who is Ishavasyam. That by the Lord everything is controlled. Not by us it is controlled. Right? So this is the very important understanding. Who is the proprietor of everything? Now, where does that leave us? If we own nothing, we have nothing, are we stuck? Is it that we are not allowed to use the resources of the world? No. He is giving us use of the resources, but we should be careful not to steal them. Meaning, we should understand who is the owner and use those resources in service of the Lord. Offering them first to Him. And so, we get then to this next point of this verse, which is the quota. We see tena tyaktena bunjitaha. Right? That there is, by the Krishna, He has set apart a quota. So we have adequate resources for us to live. Then the question becomes, why do we have to work so hard, like an ass or a donkey, as Prabhupada says, to acquire so many things? It is already given by the Lord. Maya is tricking us to think that we have to chase after satisfaction for the body, the senses. And thus we work very, very hard to acquire things. But this body is not who we are. And this is the avidya, the ignorance that is permeating society. But when we realize we are a spirit soul, we see that there is a sufficient quota set aside for us to meet our needs. And then we can focus our time on meeting the needs of the soul. The body will be maintained by Krishna's provisions. He has made this complete creation so nicely. And he has set aside. So no need to waste time getting more. Just take what is provided in nature. And every living entity will have sufficient supplies to maintain a nice lifestyle. This is, again, that principle Prabhupada is guiding. Simple living, high thinking. Use your time for higher purposes. Working like an ass in the factory to acquire more wealth so you can acquire more resources is not going to give happiness, nor is it according to the Ishavasyan principle, because that means we are trying to hoard Krishna's resources. And everything is provided in nature. Prabhupada gives the example of the cow. Every farmer knows that the cow gives sufficient milk. After the calves have taken milk, still there is left for us to take. So, like that, nature is providing. Why the cow provides more milk than the calves its offspring need? Because there is a provision set aside for us. And Prabhupada always comments that milk is what develops the finer brain tissues so that one can understand the higher purposes of life. Elephants, they're given 50, 60 pounds of food every day by nature. No Costco memberships are needed. All nature is providing so much food. And even to the ant. You put a bowl of fruit on a table. Far away, don't announce, ants, there are some fruits for you to eat. Don't worry. Paramatma in the heart of that ant will inspire, go ant, there are some fruits over there. Go take. And ants will come. How do they know? Because Krishna is arranging in nature for even the ants to have food. So, this Tyaktena is very important for us to understand. There is a quota set aside for us. So we should take what is needed. But don't take more than our share. We must avoid taking more than our quota. Right? Because what happens when we take more than our share? That is stealing. And when we steal, what is the result? Punishment. Always. So we have a quota. And when we take more than our quota, we are taking, driven by this desire for sense gratification, it is stealing. Right? And that's why we see so much suffering. Because people are trying to take more than what is set aside for them. When we use God's resources, to build fancy homes and elaborate cars and fine clothes and jewels, we're using more than our quota. We may think, oh wait, I have acquired wealth, so now I can use that wealth to buy whatever I want and enjoy it. But that is not the law of the Lord. That may be the law of the land. Go to the market and buy all kinds of things. Black Friday is coming up this week, and everybody is anxiously awaiting what will buy this, that, and the other. Keep in mind, what is this quota that is set aside for us? Yes, we may have the wealth to buy more, but remember, we are using Krishna's resources. And is that a good use of Krishna's resources? Our quota is not set by our bank account. It is set by the need of every living entity. So we should be very mindful. Even if we have the means to enjoy so many resources, we should be careful not to waste Krishna's resources. He is providing everything to everyone. And if we take more than we need, then someone else is getting less. And you can find very simple but effective ways to try to bring this consciousness into your life. We may see things are free, but we should never view anything as free. We should view it as that's Krishna's resources. You know, I remember when I first read this verse, I was struck by, and I was traveling and it hit me, you know, in the hotel room. They give you many bars of soap. One for the, sink, one for the, shower, maybe a bar. And you think, well, these are all free. It's included within the purchase of my room. So I can use 2 bars of soap even though I'm only going to be there one day. Just using a very simple example. But if we have consciousness of this, wait a minute, this is the property of the Lord. I should not waste these bars of soap. I can use one and move it from the sink to the shower and back. But with this consciousness, no, it's given, it's there, I should use it. I lose sight that, no, this is actually the property of the Lord. So I should use it for my maintenance. The soap is necessary to cleanse the body. But don't waste it. This wasteful mentality is ultimately the thieving from the Supreme Lord. Right? You see a stack of napkins. Oh, they're free. Let me take 6. They're not free. You have a quota. We have a quota. Ultimately, it's Krishna's arrangement and resources. So we should see how we can use what's needed. Doesn't mean we don't use anything. No, Krishna has set aside resources for us. But we should try to see how we can be intelligent so that we are not, thieving and stealing. Right? So this verse should kill this thieving mentality in all of us, remembering who is the source of everything, who is providing the adequate supplies for our maintenance, and not quarreling with others to take more than our quota. And this is a profound change in our consciousness if we can live this Ishavasya principle, living a Ishvara-centered life, knowing He is a proprietor. Right? The conflict in the world we see is on confusion of this point. How much blood has been shed to say this is my land and this is not your land? This is my raw materials, this is not yours. How much quarrel? All to acquire God's resources. So much conflict. But if everybody understood this, there would be no fighting. We have the capitalists versus the communists. And Prabhupada says, we are Bhagavata communists. Meaning the citizens are not the owner, as the capitalists say, nor is the state the owner, which the communists state. Who is the owner? Ishvara, Krishna. So much conflict around claiming ownership, but it is actually Krishna's. So when we know Krishna is the owner, then there is world peace abound. There is no conflict, no more fighting saying this is mine. And we say no, this is set aside for me, for my basic sustenance, so that I can fulfill the higher purpose of life, and thus we can live this God-centered life very peacefully. There's no need to mark borders, my land and your land. It is all Krishna's land. Right? So the humans are meant to use the intelligence, not to find ways to acquire more of God's resources, but use our intelligence to learn how to serve and connect with the complete whole for our complete satisfaction. We cannot lay claim to owning lands. A no trespassing sign, that is a very humorous to Krishna. Don't trespass. Wait a minute. We are on His property. Right? So the root of sin, Prabhupada says, is the disobedience to the law of proprietorship. That is the root of sin. Right? I'm stealing, I'm using Krishna's resources for my own purpose. Like walking into somebody's kitchen and starting to make yourself a meal and eating it without asking for permission. That is their resources. No different, right? So the summary of this very important verse is Krishna is the source of everything, animate and inanimate, and thus He is the real proprietor. He has set aside a quota for us, and we should be very happy with that quota and live peacefully so that we can use our time not to acquire more, but use our time to realize the self and connect with the complete whole, and thus achieve complete satisfaction. So this is a very, instructive first verse of Isopanisad. It should, as I said in the introduction to this verse, it should shake our consciousness and make us very thoughtful. What am I using? And what do I really need? Because just because my bank account affords me the opportunity to acquire things, is it really more than my quota that has been set aside for me? Okay. So now verse 2 tells us how to escape the cycle of birth and death by understanding this Ishavasya principle. So what happens when we understand this principle? So verse 2, one may aspire to live for hundreds of years if he continually goes on working in that way. For that sort of work will not bind him to the law of karma. There is no alternative to this way for man. So a little enigmatic verse, right? One may aspire to live for hundreds of years if he continuously goes on working in that way. For that sort of work will not bind him to the law of karma. There is no alternative to this way for man. So we all want to live a very long time, right? The jiva is eternal, so this is a natural consciousness. How to live a long time, this verse is saying. Work according to a way that does not bind one. So the quantity of life is not important, it's the quality of life. It's about living a quality life in a way to be peaceful and happy. Prabhupada gives the example. The tree lives for thousands of years. But is that a very high quality life? Just standing, tolerating heat, cold, sun, rain. Very limited consciousness. So it is about living a high quality life. So the key to increasing the quality of our life, not the quantity, is to work in a way that is not binding. We have to work. We have to do things. So how to work is what's important. So we know there are three kinds of work. Akarma, karma, and vikarma. Karma is the pious activities that takes us to the higher realms of the material world. Vikarma are the sinful activities that take us to the lower realms of the material world. But both are binding, meaning both keep us within this material world. Right? Working for sense gratification is either in a regulated way, that is karma, or an unregulated way, that is vikarma. But both are for the purpose of enjoying the senses. And thus one will be bound with birth, death, old age and disease, adhyatmika, adhibhautika, adhidevik, these threefold miseries. Right? So this transmigration will continue according to the laws of karma, so long as we stay in the realm of working in karma or vikarma. Right? So only bhakti, or working without reactions, can free us from the cycle of birth and death. Because when we work according to Ishvara, according to the proprietor, then there is no reaction. Then we can be free and live eternally, long life, in peace and happiness. But we must do so in a God-centered way, understanding this Ishavasya principle. Then we will not bind ourselves. We work according, understanding, wait, this is Krishna's resources. He is the controller, the proprietor. He has set aside a quota for me to achieve a particular purpose. And thus, when I work in this way, I do akarma, and thus no more suffering. But if I work for my own sense gratification, either in a regulated way or an unregulated way, either way, the end result is suffering. But akarma, bhakti, it gives us eternal peace and happiness in connection with the complete whole. And this is the highest quality of life. Then Prabhupada talks about the greatest fear. We have so much fear. And our greatest fear, we think, is death. Why? Because we lose everything we think we value at the time of death. We lose our bank account. We lose all of our assets. We lose our position in society. We lose all of our material relationships. So everything is gone instantly. if we ever had our house stolen or a car stolen, there's great pain because we lost something we cared about, or we lost the association of a loved one. Very painful. But death, we lose it all. Not one loved one or one set of possessions. We lose everything. So that is why one experiences devastation. But what should be our fear? All these things that we are losing, we think we are losing, they are just Krishna's resources. That is not a real loss to us. Our real fear should be losing the opportunity given to us in the human form of life to escape the cycle of birth and death, and thus falling down the cycle of the lower species, 8.4 million species of life. For millions of years we'll be relegated to all kinds of different life forms. If we don't work intelligently, work free from reaction, we risk this situation. That should be our greatest fear. Not losing a few resources that aren't even ours to begin with, but losing the opportunity given to us in this human form of life to escape the laws of karma and achieve complete satisfaction, and falling down to the lower species of life for millions of years. That should be our greatest fear. But if we know who is the owner of all things, recognize our quota, then we can live in peace and happiness. Right? So if we understand verse 1, then this high quality eternal life comes. Not just a long life, but a high quality life. And that is what is being instructed here in this verse 2. That one goes on working in this way will not bind him to the law of karma. So one who knows the Isopanisad principle works in a way that does not bind him, and thus achieves real peace and happiness eternally. So that is the thing. How to live this God-centered life. We offer the fruits of everything we have to Krishna. Whatever we create in this world, we understand it is Krishna's. And provide that. And Prabhupada says at the end of this verse, very nicely, no, it's at the end of the purport, he says, missing the reference, but he said that how to live this God-centered life is explained in the Nectar of Devotion, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So, exactly how to do this, it is given to us in the Nectar of Devotion. But this is what happens when one lives by the Isopanisad principle. One achieves a perfect life. So the human form of life is very valuable and very rare. Now the question is, how are we going to use it? That should be our greatest question, and also our greatest fear of misusing this very rare and valuable gift of the human form of life. Now, verse 3. The killer of the soul, whoever he may be, must enter into the planets known as the world of the faithless, full of darkness and ignorance. The killer of the soul, Atmaha. Right? This warns of the danger if we don't understand this Isopanisad principle and try to live claiming ownership. The human form of life has a great responsibility because one has a decision to make. How to live in this world. Animals, they act instinctively. And if an animal kills another animal, that is based on their nature, there is no consequence for such action. But we have to decide. We have a higher intelligence. Do I do good activities? Do I do bad activities? Or do I do bhakti? Karma, vikarma, or akarma? That is a decision we make. And because we have the power, the ability to decide, we also carry then the responsibility to own the consequences of those actions. So Prabhupada explains in the very beginning that there are only two types of people in the world. Those who are living the Isopanisad principle, God-centered, and the demons. What determines if one is a demon or God-centered? not grisly teeth or long hair or red fiery eyes. It is only a question of mindset. Does one recognize God as Ishavasyam and shape his or her life accordingly? If one does, understanding who is the proprietor, and I have my quota sent, and I must work as an offering to Krishna because he is the proprietor, then one is God-centered. Otherwise, they are a demon. There is no in between. And Krishna says this in the Bhagavad Gita as well. In the last part of Bhagavad Gita, he says, there are only suras or asuras. And simply whether one follows the Vedic principles or not. That is the line of demarcation. Right? So in this verse we learn those who don't understand the proprietor and controller and choose to steal from Krishna above their quota, there is suffering. Right? There is suffering. And this is what we see this word, Atmaha, killer of the soul. Now we say, hey, wait a minute, soul is eternal. It cannot be cut by weapon or burned by fire or withered by wind or wet by water. How you can kill the soul? So what is the meaning of the killing of the soul? It is the killing the opportunity for the soul to return back home where it finds eternal peace and happiness. We're killing the opportunity for self-realization. Because self-realization can only occur in the human form of life. That is one where is gifted the higher intelligence. So this is the greatest fear, not death. The greatest fear, again, is that we bound to the cycle of birth and death and never get out. We've worked so hard to achieve this human form of life after millions and millions of years. And now we may fall back down the lower species of life and have no idea when we'll have another chance to break this cycle. Because only in the human form of life can we break it. So one is wasting a very golden opportunity. So that is the killer of the souls, the killing of the soul's opportunity. With all of the facilities we're given, if we don't inquire, we're just killing the opportunity for the soul to return home where it came from, where it finds eternal peace and happiness. It's like a very rich person who doesn't know how to use its wealth to provide basic sustenance for itself, wasting a valuable gift. So the human form, Prabhupada comments, is like a boat. A boat is required, a very strong boat is required to cross a vast ocean. So how to cross the vast ocean of material existence? One needs the human form of life. But a boat needs a captain, someone to steer the boat, and that is the spiritual master. And the favorable winds are like the Shastra, which guide the boat across the ocean very safely. Prabhupada gives this analogy also in Srimad Bhagavatam several places. Right? So this human form of life, we have greater facilities. Right? Why do we have the comforts that we have? Better food, more facilities. Because we have a higher responsibility. This decision, what to do. Live Ishavasyam or not? Am I going to offer everything I'm making in this world to the real owner, Krishna, and use in accordance with his desire? Or I'm going to use it according to my own sense desires? Because I have that power to decide, it is a great responsibility. I have greater facilities. Just like an executive of a company. They have a bigger desk, bigger office, more resources, more people working for them. Because they have a bigger job to perform than some clerical person. But the consequences are also bigger. If the executive makes a big bad decision, the whole company can go under. So the consequences are also bigger. Resources are given more profoundly, but also the consequences are bigger. So we are given greater facilities in this human form of life. But also with that facility comes great responsibility. And these facilities are not meant to learn how to do more sense gratification, to fill our stomachs, to give us nice comforts of life, but to instead focus on the higher responsibility and opportunity of connecting back with Krishna, connecting back with the complete whole, and getting out of this cycle. That is the purpose of human life. Using the facilities of human life to eat nicely, sleep nicely, mate nicely, and defend nicely is wasting this opportunity. It is atmaha, killing the opportunity for the soul to achieve its real purpose, and thus risking moving down the lower life forms. Working like an ass or a donkey is not the meaning of human life. It is a misuse of the intelligence. Srila Prabhupada comments so powerfully in the purport to verse 3. Should read it over and over again, particularly on these days where we're enjoying material sense gratification. Very powerfully is explaining this. Because we know the misuse of our resources is simply suffering in the hellish conditions, the lower life. If we steal Lord's resources, don't act in accordance with Ishavasyam, then there will be punishment and we'll go down to the lower life form. So this is the conclusion of this. Use the quota wisely or suffer the consequences. It is up to us. So these three verses are connected. Verse 1 establishes who is the real proprietor and how we have been set aside a quota for our adequate maintenance. Verse 2 says, if you understand this and live according to Ishavasyam, you will lead to freedom from bondage, no more binding, and eternal peace and happiness. But if you do not, verse 3 tells us, atmaha, you will kill the opportunity for the soul to achieve peace and happiness, and instead you will suffer into the lower life forms and lower planetary systems. So this is how this invocation, verse 1, 2, and 3 are all nicely connected. Complete happiness met by serving the complete whole. Okay, so next week we'll discuss verses 4 through 8. Any questions or comments on this verse, these verses?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Class, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Thank
nice
you.
to hear your class, Prabhu. Prabhuji, I have one practical question related to today's class.
Yes.
Prabhuji, can you hear me?
Yes. Keep going. Yes, bro.
I discussed with you regarding this, Prabhu, but this discussion again strike me the same question. You said the Paramatma inside the ant will instruct the ant to find the food. Go there and find there is a food for you. Right? Now, here in a situation like some bugs comes to our home and they are eating our bhoga materials and they are consumed. After listening to this Isopanisad class from you, it confuses us.
Yes.
They want to know Paramatma is instructing those ants and bugs to have that, but I am restricting them, I am throwing them away. Sometimes we are killing them, right? So
Yes.
it is a big guilty feeling or kind of
Yes.
confusion mind keeps on going. How
Yes.
to manage this situation?
Yeah. Prabhupada gave very practical instruction on this because this Ishavasyam principle, there are a lot of questions, right? What is my quota even? How do I know what is my quota, right? So this is where we need guidance from Guru and Shastra. But so in the specific example of the ants and the bugs, so Prabhupada guided that, one, we should maintain our facilities so clean that the ants will find food elsewhere. There is food for them. But for the bhoga that we are reserving for the service of Krishna, we should maintain in such a clean way, ways, that the ants will not find opportunities to eat. And thus they'll find their food elsewhere. This was the example we're given of the mice. What to do because they spoil the bhoga, right? They lay their stool everywhere, they pass their urine, and it actually becomes very dangerous. So what to do? So the instruction again is that we should maintain everything so cleanly that those living entities will find their food elsewhere. Because the food for the ant doesn't have to come from our pantry. Nature is providing their food. Right? So that is the understanding how we do this. And there are times when, yes, we must, take some action to preserve the cleanliness of our boga, but we should do our best to, maintain everything so nicely that it becomes in very limited and very small ways that happens. So that's the goal and the understanding. And ultimately, our consciousness should be that we are using this all in Krishna's service. Once Prabhupada was eating some mangoes, and actually some ants came, and one of the disciples grabbed the bowl and went to wash them away. And Prabhupada said, "What's the harm? Let them eat a little bit. How much they'll take anyways?" So that was the other side of that. He was being very practical also. But the main answer to your question is we should try to maintain things in such a way that the other living entities are not coming. But we can also set aside foodstuffs, for those living entities based on our living situation also. In Srimad Bhagavatam, Narada Muni explains in the ideal Grahastha life that the Grahastha is not only responsible for feeding their family, but feeding all living entities around them. Right? So, we can find ways to, if we need to, to feed. Again, we have to be practical in what can happen. If you do in an apartment or a home, maybe your neighbors will complain, and then there'll be some difficulty also. So be practical. But that's how we can handle that situation. It's okay?
Thank you, Prabhuji. Wonderful answer and very practical answer.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
This is Prabhupada's answer. He gave that instruction. So thank you.
Okay.
Anything else? Anybody else has?
Hare Krishna, bro.
Hare Krishna.
Probably, I think you just touched base on that a little bit. So, to understand what's our quota,
Yes.
right? So that's, that was a question since the time you that presentation here.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure how do anybody could determine what's their quota?
Yeah. So the quota, this similarly, we discussed this when we we're talking about atyahara prayasascha, right? Prajalpo niyamagraha, this atyahara. What is overconsumption? Well, it is very individual, right? So what is more for one may be less for somebody else. So it takes a fair amount of introspection to understand, and maybe possibly some guidance from someone who can see for you what you may not be able to see yourself. But with some basic introspection, and we ask this simple, concept, what do I really need for my purpose? Take the example of, a house. Do I need a 6-bedroom house? Well, I need a roof over my head. I need some basic protection from the elements. So, but do I need that, or do I need something, again, basic and functional? Maybe, though, I need a big house because, I want to invite devotees over and spread the holy names of Krishna. Okay. So, what is more for one may be less for somebody else. So it takes a fair bit of honest introspection for oneself without rationalizing. The rationalization starts to come in. Right? And that's where we sometimes need guidance from those who can maybe help us see, is this too much or is this appropriate? And it takes a little bit, but it is, we should not judge, somebody has, this fancy something or another. They're not living by their quota. Well, we don't know the full, purport or objective. So more focus on ourselves and think, what is the minimum I need for my basic necessities? Right? And then you can, if you answer that question honestly, you'll start to live this Ishava. And my suggestion is, find very small ways to do this. I gave the example of soap in the hotel room just because I travel a lot. That's the one that stuck to me, Or things that we think are free. Don't think anything ever again is free. It is not free. It is Krishna's resources. Use them wisely. right? That will start to bring about our way to live a little bit more simple of a life. Use less. I'm driving my car. Do I have to slam on the gas to accelerate or use nicely? I'm using fuel. That is Krishna's resource. Maybe I'll preserve the fuel. This is speaking from someone who drives very fast. But the point is, when we start to find small, subtle ways in our existence to use it, it'll permeate to larger decisions in our life. So start small, but bring this concept. Nothing is free in our life. Even if my bank account allows me to buy it, and again, Black Friday is coming up. What do we need for our sustenance? Then buy it. That's correct?
Sure, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Everybody must be depressed. Oh, I had all these plans. I wanted this, that. Now it's all ruined. I'm going to feel guilty about it. Forgive me, please.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Prabhuji, I have just a couple of questions. The first one is, do we have a study guide for this book, Prabhu?
No.
The previous books we had a study guide. So is there a similar study guide for this book?
There is not. Just the text itself.
And just my second question, Prabhuji, last week we had to leave for our service. We couldn't, I couldn't ask any questions. But so you said that these the Isopanisad are derived from the Yajurveda.
Mm-hmm.
So were these actually slokas written by Vedavyasa?
Well, they were put into writing, but they were not originally composed by him. Just like, Srimad Bhagavatam was not composed by him, but he wrote it. Or, Bhagavad Gita was not composed by him, but he put it to writing. So he put it to writing, but the Isopanisad is a conversation from Manu. But ultimately, the prayers and the ideas come from Krishna himself. So Srila Vyasadeva put to writing the Isopanisad.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dhanapradam. Very nice class, very practical one actually.
Hare Krishna.
Puts a lot of things in the open.
Yes. Thank you, Mother. As I said in the beginning of the first verse, it should shake our consciousness. If you're feeling a little unsettled right now, that is good. Because it should. It should unsettle our consciousness a little bit. Don't become too unsettled, but a little bit is good. Because this Ishavasyan principle is a important and profound realization for us. And don't let it subside by noon today. Let it live with us a little bit longer. All right. Anything else? Okay. So thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava.